All right. Hello. Hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3354. 54. Yeah, 55. I'm not really sure. Today's date is 8th of March 2025. It's been almost like a night at 10:31 p.m. Okay. So, what exactly happened today? Nothing really at all. It's a very common day. Like, I did my design. I went to the workout, did my workout, like kind of like a something like my life is became something like a really like a like a non like a very common like just like na like nothing really at all. What do you mean by that? Okay, so okay, I think that na that's kind of like something really different. Okay, yeah. When I was early 20s now, my life was like really unique. Okay, yeah. Full of color. Like I have a bunch of friends. I hang out with those peoples. I was kind of like a living my life what's really good, really great. Okay, yeah. Every day was kind of like a something unique. I went there, I went there, I went there. I experienced something really new thing, which is really great. Right now, I am 31. Okay, living with my parents, not earning any money. Okay, all my friends are went to other another city to earn money and things like that. I am the only one who is actually in the hometown. Okay, yeah. By the way, I choose to be like it's not kind of like a something my condition is down. No, I choose to be because I wanted to work on myself first, so that I wanted to achieve something really bigger thing. Okay, yeah. Like don't really consider as a kind of like a something pathetic. Yeah, you could kind of like consider as a pathetic to me. Yeah, because yeah, like still 21 living with your parents not earning money, like yeah, you should supposed to be considered as I am pathetic, so yes I am. Okay, but what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki my perception of the world is changed. Okay, means like that na ki usually at my early 20s na I was actually thinking very lot more very colorful. Okay, yeah, like this thing that thing, and I also elaborate my emotions very widely, even if very small things. Okay, yeah. At this age, at the age of 31, it's kind of like a something like that na you are used to with this all those things, so it doesn't really add any kind of like some value to you. Example, like basically this thing at my early 20s, when I get some sort of text message from my crush or something like that, that day was kind of like a something became so amazing, so incredible that I just laugh, I just smile rest of the day. Okay, and I also talk about such thing. Like this is kind of like a something. It's not just like a basically it's this thing that ki if I went to the ground and kind of like a somebody play cricket or play football, I also talk about such stuff. Okay, or else like if I spend time with my friend, then I also talk about that ki what I went, what I eat over there. Okay, yeah. So basically, is this thing na ki like this is what kind of like a something my early 20s was like that. Okay, yeah. Like what I'm trying to tell you is something very different. Okay, yeah. That early 20s, I was kind of like a looking at the world very kind of like a something very something colorful. Okay, yeah, like every emotions kind of like a something matter to me, and I was kind of like a something liking that particular process, and I also want to talk those process in my life. Okay, yeah. In artifact episode 2. Okay, but in this age, it's you are kind of like a something just yeah, like very common, like it didn't really matter to you that much. Okay, yeah. Like basically this is in na ki like right now, yeah, like I have like a couple of friends over here. Okay, yeah. I also spend time with those people. And I also play badminton. I also run 30-minute non-stop. Yesterday I ate chicken, okay, which is really good. Okay, and like basically this thing na, it's a kind of like a something that like it happened. Yeah. Like basically this thing, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, you are actually thinking that now the consequences was actually happened at my early 20s, and the consequences actually happened at the 31. It's kind of like a something same. It's not that kind of like a something very vast different. Okay, yeah. But it's kind of like a something my perception is changed. Okay, yeah. Means looking at the world. Right now I am kind of like a something looking at the world with very dull color. Okay, dull means like that a neutral color, a kind of like a something a stable color. Okay, yeah. And I am talking in artifact of such a moment where it kind of like only matter to me a most, very most. Okay, yeah. Like basically at my early 20s I used to talk about everything, like this happened, I went there, I eat this thing, I spend time with those things, like I get text message from my crush and things like that. But today, like like in this early 30s, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like a something just another day, that's it. Okay, yeah. And also another thing na, ki I also kind of like something experience in myself, because I was actually recording artifact for almost like a decade, so I am definitely want to say that thing ki um my focus is kind of like a something very improve. Yeah, it means that na ki like basically at my early 20s I was not really focused that much, like I was kind of like a distracted by very small thing very easily. Okay, yeah. But in this early 30s I am kind of like a something lot more focused upon things that I want. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing na ki I can sit in front of my desk for almost like a 6 hour, a 7 hour, 8 hours without taking any gaps. Okay, yeah. And this was kind of like a something very incredible. Okay, yeah. Because this kind of like a stuff I never gonna do those stuff when I was at my early 20s. So my focus was really good. Okay. uh but still this is what kind of like a something I'm experiencing right now. Okay, yeah. But my life is kind of like a something dull, that it's there is no color at all at this moment. No, nothing really at all. No, yeah, it's not. It's a kind of like a something now. Okay, it's a perception. Okay, yeah, it's a perception that ki how do you look your world. Okay, yeah, it's not about age, and it's not about kind of like a something timing. It's not about the friend. It's not about the people around you. No, it's about how do you look the world. Okay, yeah. Like example is this thing that ki there is a in the bus. Okay, yeah, there is a guy who is actually listening EDM music, and there is a guy who is listening kind of like a breakup song. Okay, yeah. For those people who has a kind of like a same condition. Okay, yeah, they are kind of like coming from office, they have kind of like a some similar thing, like both the people are kind of like earning same amount of money, everything. But the journey became beautiful for those people who are kind of like enjoying the particular moment. He was kind of like listening EDM music. The person who is kind of like listening sad and stuff like that, it represents something really, yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, a perception, like how do you want to want ourselves to be happy or not. Because like the key for happiness is not depend on someone, it's depend on ourselves. If you want to be happy, you will kind of like a become happiness, you will get the happiness. It's not kind of like a depend on someone that someone will get you happiness, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like something is this thing that keep persuasion, like perception, like how do we supposed to see the world, is it colorful or not, or is it kind of like a black and white or not. Okay, yeah. Then why are you kind of like a saying this thing that you are kind of like a seeing very dull color. Well, dull color means like that ki it's not like a dull color, but it's something that na ki priorities change. Okay, yeah, means like that at early 20s my priorities is kind of like a something a fun, just enjoy the things and everything. But at this moment my priorities is my work. Okay, yeah. So basically my entire day is actually consuming for my work. Okay, yeah. And it's not kind of like a something fun, it's kind of like a something hectic. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it didn't really happen, sometimes I get resistance and stuff like that. it's lot of fucked up thing happened, so it's not fun. So that's why my most of the time is actually consumed by work, which is not that fun. So that's why it became little bit dull. Okay, yeah, it in early 20s my life was kind of like a something filled with full of fun. Okay, yeah, and at that time I also wanted to kind of like a something um, experience that particular fun and things like that. So that's why I'm thinking that that time my life was kind of like a bit really colorful. Okay, yeah. But it's just like that ki today I can also make my life is really colorful. Like basically I could accept that. I will definitely gonna accept that ki still at this moment means our early 20 our early 30s are kind of like a some little bit dull, but I am kind of like okay with this thing. Okay, it's not really that bad, it's not really kind of like a something that really fucked up. No, it's something that na ki a seriousness comes. Okay, like when you serious like when you are when you have little bit seriousness inside of you na, you are kind of like a looking at the world very kind of like a something very I don't know how you are looking at the world very serious point of perspective. Parno, I don't know, but I also look the world with serious point of perspective with little bit fun. Okay, yeah, with little bit fun. It's not that kind of like a somebody just oh, I am being serious, so I should supposed to be. No, it's not. Yeah, like I also understand that key life is kind of like a given to us. Happiness is actually depend on me. If I want to become happy, I want like if I want to be happy, then happiness is actually depend on me, so I could be happy even if there is nothing really at all. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that key just I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. So let me tell you one thing. At 31, my life is little bit dull, but still I am kind of like a something. It's good. Okay, it's not really that bad. It's good. It's a kind of like a some phase of life. How do I supposed to express this thing? It's a phase of life. Like at that time, my priority is different. At this time, my priorities is different. So this is what it is. All right, yeah. And by the way, my life is not dull. By the way, it's really good. Okay, it's really great. Okay, you could consider as me as a kind of like a very pathetic life because 31 living with parents and not earning money. So, yeah, but like I choose to be. Yeah, I choose that because I wanted to improve myself. So, whatever. Okay, okay. Let's ask question. All right. Okay. 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 Yeah. Question is, how do you see the relation between light and shadow in creating depth in art and life? Oh, that is really good question. Like that's a really good question, by the way. And by the way, this question is kind of like a somebody more or less associate with me. So I'm kind of like a somebody telling, okay, what is at least this question? Okay, where is this question came from? All right, yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, I was actually watching The Demons of Leonardo. It's a web series based on Leonardo da Vinci. If you don't really know who is that person, the person who draw world famous painting Mona Lisa, he is not just a painter. He is master of multiple things. He's like a really great. While watching that particular show, I was literally influenced by the thought process of Leonardo. How does he think? I wanted to think like him, so I went to the chat GPT and and asked that he suggest me such a question so that I would think like Leonardo da Vinci. And this is one of those questions. The question says, how do you see the relation between the light and shadow in creating the depth in art and life? Okay, yeah. Okay, let me clarify some sort of thing first. Okay, yeah. Um, I am kind of like a some photographer or graphic designer or filmmaker. I don't know. Yeah, but I am kind of like a something a creative person. Okay, yeah, and I usually kind of like a something see the world from as a visual point of perspective, that what is kind of like a look good. Okay, yeah, and in that particular process, lights and shadows are kind of like only one of the two essential thing. Okay, yeah, in photography, in graphic designing, in filmmaking, like in visual creativity, lights and shadow are really essential. Like a really you have to be new about that particular thing. Like we have kind of like a highlights and shadows. These are kind of like a setting that you actually experience when you are editing some sort of photos. Okay, yeah, but this is kind of like a something very important and essential part of visual technique. Okay, yeah, the people who kind of like assembly resonate with, like people who resonate with that particular process, like the people who are kind of like associated with this field, like a filmmaker, graphic designer, photoshop or photographer vagara, they might know how much important it is kind of like some light and shadows. Okay, yeah, but the normal people, they don't really kind of like see the world that from filmmaker point of perspective, as a photographer point of perspective. So I'm kind of like explain this thing as simple as we can. All right, yeah. So basically this thing you actually experience that when you are walking at the ground or whatever it is, uh, behind the sun it casts shadow in front of you. Okay, yeah, you see that particular shadow. It's kind of like a something very common thing. Okay, yeah, but this is something very different. Okay, yeah, what if like there is no shadow at all? Okay, there is no shadow at all. So how do you, could you imagine the world it looks like without shadow? Like without shadow, like light was there but shadow is not existence. So how do you see the world? Well, we can't see the world. What do you mean by that? Because the shadow is kind of like a something, one of the essential part of our life, that it's something that na ki, okay, because of the shadow we actually see the world in three dimensional. Yeah, literally, yes. Like let me tell you one thing na, if there is no shadow, our life could look like, everything would look like kind of like a something 2D. Example, uh, if you draw some sort of thing in your pen, in your book, that kind of like a some drawing or whatever the text that you draw, that is called 2D. It doesn't really have any shadows. Okay, yeah, if you wanted to add a shadow, what should you supposed to do is that key, whatever the text that you write or whatever kind of like a something, the image that you draw, you just kind of like a cast the shadow front, back, side, somewhere. Okay, yeah, when you kind of like a cast the shadow means like that, like you have a pen or pencil, just kind of like a create some sort of outline regarding about where it kind of like a some shadow will occurred. Okay, yeah, just kind of like a somebody, just little by little, like a, just draw this thing by the paint or brush or pencil or whatever it is, it look really good. That kind of like a somebody craft is something really look like 3D. Okay, yeah, so the visualization point of perspective, shadows are really essential to understand in 3D. Okay, yeah, it represent kind of like a something third dimension. Okay, yeah, so in art, these are kind of like a some arts and shadows are used multiple times. Okay, yeah, like you could see in like in art, in the filmmaking process, the shadows are really essential. Like I wanted to talk about the lighting technique in the filmmaking process. Okay, yeah, let's go through that lighting technique. Okay, yeah, have you watched any kind of like a something movie in the Hollywood movie? um, if you wanted to kind of like represent some sort of very serious or very kind of like a something very kind of like a something emotion that represent a character is in kind of like a stuck in between two things. Okay, yeah, so in that particular situation, you press the light in such a way so that half of the face of that particular character is lit, and half of the face of that particular character is in shadow. Okay, yeah, it represent kind of like a something that particular character in that movie was kind of like a somebody stuck in that particular situation where he won't be able to think what is right and what is wrong. Okay, yeah. So in that particular situation, as a filmmaker is kind of like a create such a lighting so that it would kind of like a something as an audience is also kind of like a something, while watching that particular show as an audience is also kind of like a something bit confused that what should he supposed to choose, right or wrong. Okay, this is kind of like a something also visually represent in the light, like half of the face is kind of like a lit, half of the face is in the shadow. Okay, and you definitely see that particular scene in the movies. Okay, uh yeah, in the movies, because this kind of like a some lighting technique will not use in serial or TV shows or in no nothing really at all, because in a film you are in the film, the director are actually creating such a situation where as an audience should supposed to be feel that particular emotion, and that emotion is also exerted by the multiple thing, lighting, sound, and emotion of the character. Okay, yeah. So lighting that I mentioned, the half of the face is in shadow and half of the face is in perfectly lit, is kind of like a some example of little bit showing the person who is kind of like a something in stuck position that he won't be able to choose what is right or wrong. Okay, yeah. So basically not just in the filmmaking, but as also I do a graphic designing. In that graphic designing process, I add kind of like a something drop shadow is kind of like a something enhance my design little bit much better. Okay, yeah, it is too much like a basically is this thing in the graphic designing process, it's kind of like a something a 2D design. Okay, yeah, like I'm kind of like a doing the design in 2D, but I wanted to showcase in 3D, so I am actually using a shadow technique. Like in setting in Photoshop, we have kind of like a simply drop shadow effect. We apply that effect, and it kind of like a simply automatically creates some sort of shadows regarding about the object that I draw in the background. So which kind of like a something really great, and it kind of like a represent that entire object that you are seeing in 2D is in 3D, which is like a really cool. It enhance the kind of like a some visual experience. Okay, yeah. In photography it is also kind of like a something very good. Okay, in photography that key, um like we have golden hour. Okay, you do if you know golden hour, in the photography we have a concept about golden hour. In that particular golden hour, your photos are always look good. What is actually golden hour? So golden hour means like that, at early sunrise or early sunset, where kind of like a something sun is in the horizon. Okay, yeah. So when the sun is in the horizon means like that at kind of like a something early stage or okay, okay. So place the kind of like a sorry person in front of that, in front of the sun, and try to take the photos. And when you took the photos, it kind of like a something creating some sort of depth, because of the light is actually coming from back and the shadows is casting on your face, it represent depth. But you are kind of like a only manually exposing your focus on the face so that it little bit better. And because of this particular process, the difference between the lights and shadow is actually created in the camera technique, which looks really good, like a really good, like a basically, why does like a basically like I don't know, like have you watched any like just take any kind of like a something music video. Most of the music videos is actually shot on golden hour. Okay, like the when the sun is in horizon. Okay, in that particular, the everything is look really good, the face and the background and everything, like it's like it create a shadow. Okay, yeah. Okay, you still not really understand. Okay, yeah. um so you have a kind of like a mobile phone. Yeah, you have a mobile phone. Okay, yeah. So turn on the torch, and basically it's a kind of like a something a light source, right? Yeah. Now what should you supposed to do is that ki, um, kind of like a something go to the kind of like a floor, okay, yeah, and basically just think that ki align your torch with the surface of the floor, okay, yeah, with the surface of the floor, okay, yeah, like it makes sure that your torch is kind of like something aligned with the surface of the floor, which kind of like a giving a some sort of shadow effect. Like you could see the dust, you could see the kind of like a something, so many things which is actually on the floor, which is kind of like a something create a depth, okay, yeah, which is like a really incredible. Same thing happened with the golden hour. Like if the golden hour you are taking a photo, you are not only taking just a kind of like a something just a characters photo or kind of like a subject photo, but you are also taking the background photo, and also background photo is also really good. Like basically it creates some sort of shadows regarding about the object, like a buildings, trees and everything, and when the shadows is cast through that thing, it looks so beautiful. So that's why most of the people are taking photo at sunset, because at the sunset or sunrise, this is kind of like something really incredible. Mostly at the sunset, at the sunset night, it looks like a really beautiful, like a entire gradient is actually happened on the cloud. Gradient means like that ki like at the sun you could see the kind of like a something very like a dark orange, and then basically it dark yellow, sorry, and then that yellow is kind of like a gradient into the blue sky, which is like it looks so beautiful. Like it's like the light is kind of like a something shifted from kind of like a blue to yellow, which is like a really incredible, okay, yeah. So as a photographer point of perspective, this is kind of like a something very incredible thing, okay, yeah. So in the art, shadows and lights are kind of like a create a, such a magic, which like a, yeah, like a, it's a kind of like a something like that ki the shadows and lights are won't be able to kind of like a something separate, no, nothing really at all. Because when there is a shadow, like when there is a shadow, there is a light, and it is like a really cool, like a basically from visual point of perspective, in art point of perspective, these are kind of like a something example that I kind of like a something experience regarding about light and shadow. Now let's talk about in the life, okay, yeah. So how do we perceive light and shadow in the real life, okay, yeah. Like what exactly matter to me, like if I'm not kind of like a some filmmaker, graphic designer or photographer, then will it be matter to me a lot? Like is it kind of like a something matter to me to talk about the lights and shadow? It's a kind of like a something very pathetic thing, na? Yeah, probably, but it just like that ki we also kind of like actually resonate with this thing light and shadow, but we don't really knew it, okay, yeah. Okay, so um I'm kind of like a telling some sort of emotion, okay, and you have to represent which one associate with it, like a light and shadows, okay, yeah. So if I'm gonna say happiness, so which kind of like a something represent, like a, will you represent shadows with the happiness, or will you represent light with happiness? Most of people are represent light with the happiness, okay, yeah. If I'm gonna say that ki sadness or fear, so how do you supposed to represent this thing? Like will you use light as a fear, or will you use shadow as a fear? I use shadow as a fear. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like a simply our mind is perceiving that. Okay, yeah, because in from the early point of perspective, when humans were exist, they have kind of like a something cycle of lights and shadow. Like at the sun, you are kind of like a something represent little bit of life and little bit of happiness, but when the sun is set, then at during the night it was kind of like a something very horror. So basically our struggling days and the shifting of light and shadows and sunlight, which kind of like a create some sort of emotion that ki during the night it should supposed to be kind of like a something very dangerous, and during the day is a kind of like a represent little bit of happiness. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like somebody is this thing, na? So that's why most of the people are kind of like somebody scared to go to the bathroom during the night. Why? Because they kind of like somebody scared of kind of like a something shadows and stuff like that, darkness. Okay, yeah. And some people are kind of like a somebody resonate happiness with the kind of like a somebody light. Okay, yeah. um this is kind of like a somebody example. Okay. Also another example is that ki visual point of perspective, shadows are kind of like representing depth. Okay, yeah, the experiment that I mentioned regarding about align your camera smartphone or mobile smartphone with the floor, on you could see the everything like a dust particle, everything, which kind of like a create the depth, which really really kind of like a something essential to understand where is this object and how much away from this particular object. If we remove that particular thing, then our entire visual is a kind of like a look 2D, which is super blunt. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like a something associate lights and shadow with our human life. Okay, yeah. I think that am I explain this thing very properly or not, but it's kind of like a something that na ki lights and shadows are like a very different thing. Okay, yeah. like um like if you wanted to represent happiness, you are kind of like a using a light or variable source of light. If you wanted to represent like a fear or kind of like a scared, you are kind of like a represent darkness. So yeah. So this is what kind of like a something really a relation between the lights and shadow creating the depth in art and life. All right, yeah. All right, I should supposed to be end here. This is it, this is then, and thank you.